Hands where I can see them! The officer's voice snapped through Terminal 4 as his grip tightened around Evelyn Reed's throat, pinning her against the cold airport wall, while travelers froze in shock. Phones came out. Someone screamed. Another person whispered, "She didn't do anything." Evelyn struggled for air, but not for control. She could end this in seconds. Break his wrist, drop him, disappear. But she didn't, because the man choking her had no idea the woman he thought was powerless wasn't just a traveler. She was a classified federal operative, and every camera recording this moment was about to erase his badge, his freedom, and his entire future. The air in John F. Kennedy International Airport's Terminal 4 was thick with the smell of stale coffee Cinnabon sugar and the metallic tang of jet fuel. It was a cathedral of human transit, a loud, anxious place where everyone was either running from something or to something. Evelyn Reed was just trying to get home. To the casual observer, she was just another face in the 700 p.m. crowd at Gate B24. She wore simple charcoal grey trousers, comfortable loafers, and a deep blue blouse that helped her blend into the sea of travellers. Her hair was pulled back in a neat professional bun. The only thing remotely remarkable about her was the intense focus she applied to the worn paperback in her hands. A simple prop to discourage conversation. She was 34 years old, and in her line of work, anonymity was her greatest asset. She was not Evelyn Reed, the senior consultant for a logistics firm. As her flawless status-sued driver's license claimed, she was Agent Evelyn Reed designation Cassandra, a Level 4 operative for Directorate 7. A clandestine government agency, so secret that even the NSA wasn't entirely sure it existed. She had just spent 72 hours in Berlin, retrieving a data cache from a compromised asset. The mission had been messy, involving a high-speed chase through the Tiergarten and a near miss at a urban station. She was exhausted. Her body ached with the memory of a hard landing on cobblestone, and her mind was still decompressing. Transitioning from the high-stakes world of codes and dangers back to the mundane. All she wanted was to board her American Airlines flight to Chicago, disappear into her window seat, and sleep. The boarding line was a chaotic shuffle. Families with screaming toddlers, stressed business people and college students all vied for position. Evelyn stood patiently, her carry-on bag at her feet. That's when she saw him. He wasn't TSA. He was Port Authority Police. His uniform, a crisp dark navy, his badge number 3491 polished to a high shine. His name tag read K. Miller. He was a large man, thick in the neck and shoulders, with a face that seemed perpetually locked in a sneer. He was walking the line with his younger, more nervous-looking partner, Officer Davis. Miller wasn't checking everyone. He was selecting. Evelyn, a master of observation and behavioral analysis, saw the pattern immediately. He stopped a man with brown skin and a long beard, asking him to open his bag right there in line. He made a group of teenagers speaking Spanish put their phones away. And then his eyes locked on Evelyn. She felt the shift in his posture, the slight narrowing of his gaze. It was a look she had seen her entire life. A look that judged, dismissed, and coveted power over her. She kept her expression neutral, her eyes dropping back to her book. Don't engage. Be the grey wall. Be boring. He broke from the line and stepped directly in front of her, blocking her path. His partner Davis hung back, looking uncomfortable. Mom Miller said, his voice a low growl that held no respect. I'm going to need to see your boarding pass and your identification. His request was technically legal, but his application was pure harassment. He hadn't asked the white woman in front of her or the white man behind her. Of course, Officer Evelyn said, her voice smooth, and practiced the perfect timbre of polite compliance. She slowly reached into her bag, her movements deliberate. Hands where I can see them, he snapped. Evelyn froze her hand, hovering over her purse. She slowly raised both hands. My ID is in my bag, officer. How would you like me to retrieve it? Don't get smart with me, Miller spat. Use 2 fingers slowly. The people in line behind her began to murmur. A middle-aged woman with a tight perm, a Mrs. Albright, huffed, Honestly, these people just do what he says and stop holding us all up. Evelyn ignored her. With theatrical slowness, she extracted her wallet and boarding pass. She handed them over. Miller stared at her driver's license for a long, exaggerated moment. Evelyn Reed, a logistics consultant. That's a fancy title. Where you really coming from? A business meeting in New York, Evelyn replied evenly. Her legend was airtight. The address on her license was real. Her consulting firm was a registered LLC, a directorate front, of course, and her credit score was a pristine 780. H. Miller grunted. He handed her ID back, but kept her boarding pass. I'm going to need you to step out of the line, Mom. We're going to do a secondary search of your luggage. Officer Evelyn said, her voice still calm, but with a new cold edge. My bag was cleared by TSA. I'm a pre-check approved traveler. Is there a specific reason for this search? Miller's face darkened. He hated being questioned. He lived for this moment, for the flash of fear in their eyes. He wasn't getting it from her, and it made him furious. The reason he said stepping closer until he was invading her personal space is because I said so. Now step aside, or you're going to have a much bigger problem. Evelyn knew this dance. She had to balance maintaining her cover with protecting her rights. But more than that, she had to protect the mission-critical items hidden in the false bottom of her carry-on. A micro-encryptor that held the Berlin cache. I am happy to comply with a legal search officer, she said, but I would like to know the probable cause. Are you detaining me? That was the trigger, the legalese. He saw it as a challenge from someone he believed was beneath him. You're detaining yourself, he growled. You're all the same. Think you're better than everyone, mouth thing off with your rights. Kev, Officer Davis said, stepping forward. Let's just do the search. And shut up, Davis. Miller barked, never taking his eyes off Evelyn. I've got this. He grabbed her carry-on bag and unzipped it, dumping the contents onto the floor of the terminal. A makeup bag, a change of clothes, a paper bag, a bottle of water. Hey, someone shouted. My things. Evelyn said, her voice hardening. What's this? Miller said, picking up her metal water bottle. He unscrewed it, sniffed it. What are you smuggling in here? Water, officer. It's empty as per regulations. He threw it to the ground where it clattered loudly on the linoleum. He was a bully, plain and simple. He was rummaging through her things, his hands dirtying her clothes, when he saw the small velvet pouch for her jewelry. He opened it. Well, he said, holding up a simple gold necklace. This looks expensive. You consult your way into this. The line was silent. The implication was disgusting, clear and loud. Evelyn's eyes, which had been passive and polite, turned to obsidian. Her training, the years of learning to kill a man with a ballpoint pen, screamed at her to act, but she held back. The mission, the cover. Officer, she said, her voice now dangerously quiet. You are crossing a line. Oh, I'm crossing a line. Miller laughed a harsh, ugly sound. I think you're a trafficker or a mule. I think you're exactly the kind of person we need to keep out of this country. I am an American citizen, you idiot. Evelyn said, the mask finally cracking. I'm flying from New York to Chicago. Don't you dare call me an idiot, Miller roared. He pointed a thick finger in her face. You're done. You're not getting on this flight. You're coming with me. He reached for her arm. Evelyn, reacting on pure instinct honed by a decade of combat, pulled her arm back. Do not touch me. It was all the excuse he needed. Resisting, Miller bellowed the word, echoing in the sudden silence of the gate. She's resisting arrest. He didn't just grab her. He launched himself at her. He was 250 lb of armor muscle and unadulterated rage. Evelyn at a 140 lb was a coiled spring of lethal efficiency. But her first priority was still the cover. She couldn't deploy the takedown. She was trained for the one that would snap his elbow and clavicle in a single fluid motion. So she allowed herself to be shoved. He slammed her back against the terminal wall next to a Visit New York poster. The impact knocked the wind from her, the back of her head hitting the plaster with a dull thud. A collective gasp rose from the crowd. Kev Jesus Davis shouted, his hand hovering over his radio, but not his weapon. "She's resisting," Miller yelled again, his face now inches from hers, slick with sweat and spittle. He was high on the adrenaline, the power. "I am not resisting." Evelyn gasped, trying to regain her footing. "You have no reason to arrest me." "I'll give you a reason," he snarled. And then he did it. He drove his left hand forward, not in a punch, but in an open-palmed shove. It would have been bad enough, but he didn't stop. His thick, meaty fingers clamped around her throat, cutting off her air. He wasn't just restraining her. He was choking her. Time seemed to slow down. Evelyn's world narrowed to the man's face in front of her, the broken capillaries on his nose, the smell of his garlic-laden lunch, the pure, unadulterated hatred in his pale blue eyes. Her training screamed, "Airway blocked. Threat level, critical lethal force authorized, neutralized." She could feel the panic rising, not from the lack of air. She could hold her breath for 3 minutes, but from the public F-facing vulnerability, the sheer humiliating injustice of it. Around her, the world exploded. "Oh my God, he's choking her!" A woman screamed. Leo, a 19-year-old college student, had been filming the whole thing. His hands were shaking, but he kept his phone steady. He zoomed in on Miller's hand on Evelyn's face. "Get off her, you pig," another man shouted. "But Mrs. Albright," the woman from the line chirped up. "She was resisting. The officer is just doing his job. She should have complied." Miller, fueled by his one supporter, squeezed tighter. "You're going to learn some respect, girl," he whispered, the word girl dripping with venom. Evelyn's vision began to get tunnel-visioned. This was no longer about the cover. This was about survival, but it was also about the long game. She had a choice. Choice A. Neutralize the threat. Break his wrist. Use the pressure point behind his ear that would drop him like a sack of rocks. The crowd would see it. The directorate would have to pull her burn her legend, and the Berlin cash would be compromised. Choice B. Endure. Wait. Let this play out. Let the cameras roll. Trust the system she secretly worked for. Even as this other uglier part of the system tried to kill her, she made her choice. With the last of her usable breath, her voice a raw, hoarse whisper. She said 4 words that he would not understand until it was too late. "You are non-compliant." It wasn't a plea. It was a judgment. She then did something that confused him entirely. She stopped struggling. She locked her eyes with his, and with all the focus in her body. She memorized him. This new, terrifying calm seemed to enrage Miller more than her resistance. He drew back his other hand, balling it into a fist. He was going to hit her. Port Authority, back the hell off. A new voice, sharp and authoritative. Officer Davis had finally belatedly done his job. He had his taser out, not pointed at Evelyn, but at Miller. "What the hell are you doing?" Davis Miller roared, his hand loosening on Evelyn's throat. Evelyn took a deep, ragged breath, coughing, her hand flying to her own neck. The skin burned. I said, "Back off, Kev. You're done." 2 more officers were running toward them, drawn by the commotion. Supervisor Henderson, a man whose paunch hung over his duty belt, was right behind them. "What in the Sam Hill's going on here?" Henderson boomed. Miller finally stepped back, his chest heaving. He immediately switched to victim mode. This suspect, he pointed at Evelyn, was non-compliant and became aggressive. "She assaulted me. I had to use necessary force to restrain her." "Assaulted you?" Leo, the kid with the phone, stepped forward. "I've got the whole thing on video, man. You choked her. She didn't touch you." "Get that phone out of my face," Miller lunged, but Davis put a hand on his chest. "Sir," Davis said to Henderson, his voice shaking, "we need to review the footage. All of it." Evelyn leaned against the wall, her legs trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline dump. She was a professional, but she was also a black woman in America, and this scene was a trauma she knew all too well. The only difference was that this time she had a security clearance that could topple governments. "Supervisor Henderson," Evelyn said, her voice a rasp. The crowd quieted to hear her. Officer Miller has committed aggravated assault. His badge number is 3491. I am pressing charges and I have my own recording. She reached up and tapped a small discreet pin on her blouse, a high-resolution audio-visual recorder. Miller's face went from red to a pasty, sickly white. "All of you," Henderson said, realizing this was a PR bomb waiting to detonate. "My office now, you," he pointed at Leo. "I'm going to need that phone." "No, sir," Leo said, surprisingly brave. "This is my property and this is evidence. I'm already uploading it to the cloud." Evelyn gave the student the slightest, most imperceptible nod of approval. The dynamic had shifted. The power was no longer in Miller's meaty fist. It was in the digital cloud, and it was in the small, unassuming pin on Evelyn's blouse. The security office in the terminal sublease was a sterile, windowless box that smelled of industrial cleaner and fear. The fluorescent lights hummed, casting a sickly yellow pall over everyone. It was a room designed to make people feel small and trapped. It was not working on Evelyn Reed. She sat composed in a hard plastic chair, her bag hastily repacked by a sheepish Officer Davis at her feet. Her throat was a tapestry of red and purple, a clear handprint already blooming on her skin. She had refused medical attention. "I'll wait," she'd said, her voice flat. Across from her, Officer Kevin Miller was pacing his victim act, now replaced by a belligerent defensive energy. He was loudly recounting his version of the story to Supervisor Henderson, who was rubbing his temples. "And I told her, 'Mom, you need to step out of the line.' And she got in my face, called me an idiot. I felt threatened. My life was in danger." Evelyn almost laughed. It was the script, the pathetic, worn-out script they always used. "She's 5'5", and you're 62, Kev." Davis muttered from the corner, where he was studiously avoiding eye contact. "You stay out of this, rookie," Miller snapped. "You don't know the law. It's about perceived threat. Perceived by whom?" Officer Evelyn's voice cut through the room. It was hoarse, but hard as steel. "You perceived a threat because I asked you for probable cause. Or did you perceive a threat because I didn't comply fast enough for your ego?" "See," Miller shouted, pointing at her aggressive belligerent. "Right there, sir." "You see it?" Henderson sighed. A long, wheezing sound. He was a man drowning in paperwork, and Evelyn had just become a stack of it he didn't want. He turned to her, his tone patronizing. "Mom, Ms. Reed, look, it's clear there was a misunderstanding here. Officer Miller has a tough job. He has to make split-second decisions. Now I'm sure we can handle this without any more fuss. We'll get you a voucher for a new flight. Maybe a meal." He was trying to buy her off a Cinnabon and a plane ticket in exchange for being choked in public. "A misunderstanding," Evelyn repeated. She slowly stood up. The energy in the room shifted again. The victim was gone. The consultant was gone. What stood there was something cold and sharp. "Supervisor Henderson, let's be perfectly clear," she said, walking slowly toward his desk. "Your officer, Kevin T. Miller, badge Thraver 91, committed a felony. He assaulted me in view of at least 50 witnesses and multiple cameras, including his own body cam, which I'm sure you're already trying to find a way to lose. Now you listen here." Henderson began puffing up. "No, you listen," Evelyn commanded. She leaned forward, placing her hands flat on his desk. "This isn't a negotiation. This isn't a customer service complaint. This is the part where I am allowed to make one phone call. And I suggest you let me make it because if I don't, the people I work for are going to send a team to find out why. And they are not customer service oriented." The specificity of her threat, the lack of fear, finally pierced Henderson's bureaucratic fog. This was not a typical disgruntled passenger. Miller, however, was too dense. "Oh, who are you going to call? Your consulting firm? Your lawyer?" Evelyn ignored him. She looked only at Henderson. "Get me a secure line now." "We don't have secure lines for civilians," Henderson stammered. "My cell phone will do," Evelyn said. "But I will need you to write down a name. When my call is answered, you will identify yourself and ask for this person. Do not interrupt. Do not speak unless spoken to." She was giving them orders in their own office. Henderson, nonplussed, just nodded, pulling a notepad toward him. Evelyn took a deep breath. This was it. The mission was secondary. The cash was secondary. The Directorate protocol for an operative compromised by domestic law enforcement was clear. Assert control, dominate. The name Evelyn said is Robert Thorne, Director Robert Thorne. And who is he? Henderson asked, scribbling. You can ask him yourself, Evelyn said, pulling out her phone. She noted the 2 new bars of signal, a gift from the mini relay in her bag. She dialed a number that wasn't saved in her contacts, one she had memorized. It rang once. A crisp male voice answered, Yes. Evelyn put the phone on speaker. This is Supervisor Henderson of the Port Authority Police at JFK Terminal 4. She said, feeding the supervisor his line. Henderson's eyes widened. He picked up the thread, his voice quavering. Oh yes, this is Supervisor Henderson. I'm looking for a Mr. Robert Thorne. There was a pause. The voice on the other end became dangerously cold. Who gave you this number? I'm with a M. Evelyn Reed. Put her on now. Evelyn picked up the phone. Director Thorne, this is Agent Reed. Code Cassandra. Another pause. The air in the room was so thick it was hard to breathe. Agent Reed. Thorne's voice was back. All business. Report. Are you secure? Negative, sir. I have been compromised. Location JFK Terminal 4. Security Subble Office 2B. I have been physically assaulted and am being illegally detained by Port Authority Officer Kevin T. Miller, badge 3491. Miller looked like he was going to be sick. Assaulted. Thorne's voice lost all its corporate polish. It was now pure weaponized ice. By local law enforcement. Yes, sir. The officer grabbed my throat. The event was witnessed and recorded by multiple parties. Give me the ranking officer, Thorne commanded. Evelyn held the phone out to Henderson. The supervisor took it as if it were a live grenade. This is Henderson. Mr. Henderson. Thorne's voice blasted from the speaker. You have approximately 60 seconds to explain why your officer assaulted one of my senior field operatives. Agent Reed is a protected federal asset under Title 18, Section 111. Your officer, by placing his hands on her, has not just committed assault. He has committed a federal offense punishable by a minimum of 10 years in prison. He has also, and this is far more serious, just jeopardized a national security operation that has been active for 3 years. This was a lie, or at least an exaggeration. The Berlin cache was important, but not that important. But Thorne, like Evelyn, knew how to use the system. Henderson was white. I didn't know. She's what? She is the person, Mr. Henderson, who has the full, unadulterated and immediate backing of the United States Department of Defense. Your officer's career is over. What you need to decide in the next 30 seconds is whether yours is too. What? What do you want? Henderson whimpered. First, you will place Officer Miller in restraints. He is to be considered hostile and a flight risk. I can't just arrest my own man. You can, and you will. Or I will have a federal tax team do it for you in the next 10 minutes. Your choice. Kev Henderson said, turning to Miller, his face a mask of sweat and terror. Give Davis your weapon. Sit in the chair. Sir, you can't be serious. She's lying. Miller protested, his bluster now pure desperation. Officer Miller, Thorne's voice said from the phone. Shut your mouth. It's too late for you. You are a racist, incompetent bully, and you just picked a fight with the wrong government. Your 12 prior excessive force complaints, the ones your supervisor so kindly buried, are about to be unburied. That hit Henderson. He pulled it further. How did you? We are the people who know Mr. Henderson. Now arrest him. Second, you will give Agent Reed her bag, her phone, and an armed escort to her flight, which you will hold for her. No, Evelyn said, speaking for the first time. All eyes turned to her. Agent Reed, Thorne said, confused. I'm not getting on that flight, Director. Evelyn said the event happened in public. The solution needs to be public. I am a federal agent, but I am also a black woman. He did this to me because I am a black woman. If you fly me out of here, he will tell everyone I was a spook who got away with it. This problem, this parasite, stays here. The cancer stays in this room. He needs to be arrested as Kevin Miller, the racist cop, not as the guy who messed with a Fed. There was a long, profound silence. Evelyn stared at Henderson. Miller stared at the floor. Davis stared at Evelyn, a strange, newfound respect in his eyes. Director Thorne was quiet for a full 10 seconds. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer. Understood. Agent Reed, your discretion is as always impeccable. He cleared his throat, the ice returning. Mr. Henderson, you heard the agent. My original order stands. Arrest Officer Miller, but you will not be escorting Agent Reed to her flight. You will be escorting her to a new room, a clean room where she will wait for my legal team. They will be there in 20 minutes, and they are, I assure you, much, much scarier than I am. The call clicked off. Henderson looked at Miller. Miller looked at Henderson. The old boys' club was officially closed. Davis Henderson said, his voice dead. Cuff him. The moment Officer Davis fumbled with his handcuffs, the reality of the situation crashed down on Kevin Miller. This wasn't a talking to. This wasn't administrative leave. This was a hands behind your back arrest. You can't do this. Miller roared, pulling his arm away from his partner. It's her word against mine. She's some lying. It's my word too, Kev. The voice came from Officer Davis. He had finally decisively picked a side. His face was pale, but his hand was steady. I saw what you did. You choked her. She wasn't resisting. You lost control again. You traitor. Miller snarled. I'm not the one who assaulted a civilian in the middle of a terminal, Davis said. Now turn around. I'll have your badge for this, you rookie. Maybe, Davis said, but you won't have yours. Miller, seeing no way out, finally relented, letting Davis cuff him. The sound of the metal ratchet clicking shut was the loudest sound Evelyn had ever heard. It was the sound of a future ending. As Davis was patting him down, Miller's eyes fell on Evelyn. They were a toxic brew of hatred, disbelief, and a new terrible fear. Who are you? He whispered. Evelyn simply held his gaze. I'm the logistics consultant you just assaulted. The door to the office burst open. It wasn't Thorne's legal team. It was two Port Authority captains, their faces grim. Henderson had clearly radioed for backup. They looked at the scene. Henderson, sweating Davis, cuffing his partner Miller, looking homicidal, and Evelyn, a calm, bruised woman standing in the center of the storm. What the hell, Henderson, one of the captains barked. This is a federal matter now, Captain Henderson stammered. This woman, she's protected. Protected? What does that mean? It means Evelyn said that Officer Miller is being arrested for assault battery and deprivation of rights under color of law. Before the captain could respond, the door opened again. This time, it was two men and one woman. They wore no uniforms. Their dark, impeccably tailored suits screamed federal. They didn't work for the DOD. They were Justice Department Civil Rights Division. Thorne didn't just send lawyers. He sent the cavalry. The lead attorney, a sharp woman named Amanda Singh, walked in, surveyed the room, and nodded as if it were exactly what she expected. Agent Reed? I'm Amanda Singh, DOJ. Director Thorne sends his apologies for your travel delays. He's arranged for a secure transport. She turned to the PA captains. Gentlemen, I am here to take possession of your prisoner, Kevin T. Miller, on behalf of the United States government. We will also be taking all video evidence witness statements and personnel files related to this officer and supervisor Henderson. Henderson looked like he'd been shot. My files. Your pattern of suppressing excessive force complaints is of particular interest to us, Singh said, not even looking at him reading from a file on her tablet. 12 complaints in 3 years, all dismissed for insufficient evidence despite witness testimony. You're not just a bad supervisor, Mr. Henderson. You're an accomplice. The captains, seeing the political winds shift with hurricane force, immediately stepped away from Henderson. The prisoner is all yours, counselor, one of them said. They were taking Miller out of the room. He was silent now, his face a mask of defeated, impotent rage. As he passed Evelyn, he stopped forcing the DOJ agents to pull him. He looked at her throat at the vivid dark bruises his fingers had left. "It was worth it," he whispered, a final pathetic attempt at defiance. Evelyn watched him be dragged away. The last words of a weak man, she said to no one in particular. Singh turned to Evelyn. "Agent Reed, we have a car for you. We'll take you to a secure facility for a full debrief and medical check." "Thank you, Miss Singh," Evelyn said. "But first, I have a promise to keep." She walked out of the office, Singh and her team flanking her like a presidential detail. The PA captains and a shell shocked Henderson were left behind in the sterile room. The new reality of their lives crashing down on them. Evelyn walked back into the main terminal. The gate was in chaos. The flight was delayed and people were angry, but the source of the gossip was right in front of them. Leo, the student, was being questioned by another officer. Mrs. Albright. The Karen was telling anyone who would listen that the officer was a hero and the girl was a menace. Evelyn walked straight to Leo. "Excuse me, officer," she said. The officer, seeing her bruised neck, flinched. "Mama, Leo," Evelyn said, ignoring the cop. "My name is Evelyn. Thank you for what you did. You were very brave." Leo looked stunned. He couldn't do that. It wasn't right. No, it wasn't." Evelyn agreed. "My lawyers," she motioned to Singh, "will need a copy of that video. They will also make sure your phone is returned to you immediately. It's already on TikTok," Leo said, his voice small. "And Twitter, it has like 100,000 views already." Evelyn smiled a real genuine smile. Good. The truth should be seen. She then turned her attention to Mrs. Albright, who had gone silent, her mouth open. "Mom," Evelyn said, her voice dropping. "You saw what happened, and you chose to support the man who was strangling me." Well, he's an officer," Mrs. Albright stammered. "He's a criminal," Evelyn corrected her. "And you are a witness who just tried to support a false narrative. Perjury is a crime just like assault. I hope for your sake, when you are subpoenaed, you find the courage to tell the truth." Mrs. Albright's face turned a shade of mottled red and white. She turned and practically ran from the gate. Evelyn Reed, flanked by federal agents, her head held high, despite the pain in her neck, walked out of Terminal 4. She hadn't made her flight. She hadn't gotten to sleep. But the Berlin cash was secure in her bag, and a monster who had been hiding behind a badge was in chains. It wasn't the day she'd planned, but it was, she had to admit, a good day's work. By the time Evelyn was sitting in a black Suburban speeding toward a DoD safe house in Manhattan, the digital wildfire had already become an inferno. Leo's video was the spark. It was raw, shaky, and undeniable. It wasn't just a video. It was the video. It captured the entire exchange, starting from Miller's condescending, "Where you really coming from?" to the horrific close-up shot of his hand clamping around Evelyn's throat. The audio was crystal clear. Evelyn's calm. "Do not touch me." Miller's resisting, and the screams of the bystanders. It had been retweeted by a major news anchor in New York within 30 minutes. By the time Evelyn was drinking a bottle of water in the safe house, it was the #1 trending topic on the planet. The hashtag JFK assault was everywhere. News outlets smelling blood descended on JFK. They found a port authority in full-blown panic. The initial statement released by a low-level PR flack was a disaster. The Port Authority is aware of an incident at Terminal 4 involving an officer and a non-compliant passenger. The matter is under investigation and the officer has been placed on administrative leave. The internet tore it apart. Non-compliant. He choked her. Read the top comment. Administrative leave. Suspicion. This is a joke. Who is she? Find her. Protect her. Then a second video surfaced. This one was from a different angle, filmed by a woman who had been sitting near the gate. This video clearly showed Mrs. Albright yelling, "He's just doing his job. She should have complied." The internet, now a digital jewelry, promptly found and identified Mrs. Albright. By morning, her employer, a small accounting firm in Scarsdale, had released a statement condemning the views of our employee who had also been placed on administrative leave. The karma was spreading, but the real story was happening behind the scenes. In Washington, Director Thorne was on a warpath. He wasn't just a director. He was a former four-star general with a direct line to the White House. He saw the assault on Reid not just as a civil rights violation, but as an existential threat to his agency's ability to operate. If his agents in their most vulnerable state incognito on domestic soil could be assaulted by local police, his agency was worthless. He made two calls. The first was to the Attorney General. The second was to the Governor of New York. By 10:04 p.m., the narrative had been irrevocably seized by the federal government. The Department of Justice released a powerful statement. The DOJ is aware of the disturbing events at JFK International. We can confirm that the victim is a federal employee who was traveling on official business. The officer in question, Kevin T. Miller, has been arrested on federal charges including assaulting a federal officer and deprivation of rights under color of law. The investigation will be handled by the Civil Rights Division. The phrase federal employee changed everything. The media went into a frenzy. Was she FBI, CIA, a diplomat? The speculation was wild. Evelyn Reid, the anonymous logistics consultant, was now the most famous mystery woman in the world. For Miller, the world had simply ended. He was not in a local precinct holding cell. The DOJ had transferred him to the Metropolitan Detention Center, a federal prison. He was no longer a cop. He was inmate NALA 945581. His union-appointed lawyer, a man who had gotten him out of 12 previous scrapes, took one look at the federal charge sheet and the viral video and told him, "Kev, the best I can do is beg them for a plea. You're looking at a decade minimum." Miller, in his cell, finally broke. He didn't rant. He didn't rage. He just sat on his cot and wept. He hadn't been afraid of choking a woman in public, but he was terrified of the consequences. He had believed with every fiber of his being that there would be none. The following 72 hours were a masterclass in systemic deconstruction. Director Thorne and the DOJ didn't just want Miller. They wanted the system that produced him. "I don't want the one cockroach," Amanda Thorne had said to Ms. Singh over a secure line. "I want the whole nest. I want the ground salted." They began with Supervisor Henderson. Henderson arrived at his office the next morning to find two FBI agents waiting for him. They weren't from the Civil Rights Division. They were from the Public Corruption Unit. Mr. Henderson, the lead agent, said, "We have a warrant to seize your computers, your files, and your personal phone. This is about the Miller incident. I'm cooperating." Henderson blustered. "This is about 12 separate incidents you failed to investigate, sir." The agent replied, holding up the warrant. "This is about obstruction of justice conspiracy and making false statements to federal officers." Henderson had, in his initial panic, told the Port Authority captains that Miller's body cam had malfunctioned, but Officer Davis, in his official sworn statement to the DOJ, had revealed that Henderson had ordered him to forget to log the footage. Davis, seeing a lifeline, had given the feds everything. Henderson's administrative leave became an unpaid suspension, which became a "you'd better resign before we indict you" conversation. He resigned by noon, his 25-year career ending in a 2S sentence email. He lost his job, his reputation, and as the feds began digging into his finances, he was about to lose his pension. Next was the Port Authority Police Department itself. The governor, under immense pressure from Washington and a public screaming for blood, announced a full and independent review of the PAPD's training, hiring practices and oversight procedures. This wasn't a PR move. The DOJ was forcing it using a consent decree, a legally binding agreement to take over the department's internal affairs. The new training would be mandatory. It would include de-escalation implicit bias and a new module designed by the DOJ's finest, which was unofficially titled "Don't Assault Civilians Who Might Be Secret Agents." Officer Davis was the only one who found a path to redemption. He gave his testimony, handed over his own body cam footage, which corroborated Leo's video, and was candid about the culture that Miller had fostered. He was placed on desk duty for a year, a pariah to the old guard, but seen by the reformers as a sign of hope. He was a man who had stood by while a bad thing happened, but who at the last possible second had chosen to do the right thing. It wasn't heroic, but it was something. And what of Evelyn? She was in a pristine, comfortable safe house being debriefed by Thorne himself. "The Berlin cash is secure," she reported. "All business. The asset is dark." The mission was a success. The mission, Thorne said, pouring 2 glasses of water, was a mess. "But this is clean." He motioned to the TV, which was playing a news report about Henderson's resignation. "You're a hero," Evelyn Thorne said. "No, Sir," Evelyn said, looking at the livid bruises on her neck in the reflection of the dark screen. "I was a victim. Then I was an agent. Hero was never part of the equation." "You endured," Thorne said, his voice soft. "You took a blow that would have broken most people, and you held your ground. You didn't break cover, and you didn't break your composure. You let him destroy himself. That's a new kind of power. It's the only one I had, sir. It's the only one women who look like me ever have. The power to endure the hope that this time someone will be watching." "We were watching," Evelyn Thorne said. "And this time we acted." He slid a file across the table. Kevin T. Miller. His life story. Evelyn opened it. It was all there. A high school bully washed out of the Marines for anger issues. His 12 complaints. The ex-wife who had a restraining order. It was a portrait of a man who had been a time bomb his entire life. He's pleading. Thorne said he'll plead guilty to the federal charges in exchange for a recommendation of 10 years. He'd get 20 if he went to trial. He'll take the deal. 10 years, Evelyn said, it didn't feel like enough. It felt like too much. It was just a number. He will serve it in a federal prison, not a state-run country club. He will lose his pension. He will be a convicted felon for the rest of his life. He will never own a gun or a badge again. It's as close to justice as we can get. Evelyn. Evelyn closed the file and the others. Henderson is ruined. The department is being rebuilt. Mrs. Albright was in fact subpoenaed. She committed perjury lying to the grand jury. She's facing 6 months for that. Evelyn's eyebrows shot up. "You went after her." "We salt the earth, Agent Reed," Thorne said. "Enabling is just as toxic as the act itself." 6 months later, the on-law judge Anand Donnelly of the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of New York called the case. United States vs. Kevin T. Miller. The courtroom was packed. Evelyn was there, sitting in the front row, not as Agent Reed, but as Evelyn Reed Citizen. She wore a sharp navy blue suit, her hair down. The bruises on her neck were long gone, but the memory was not. Miller was brought in wearing an ill-fitting suit, his swagger gone, replaced by the sagging, defeated posture of a man who had lost everything. He was 50 lighter, his face grey. His lawyer, as promised, had advised him to plead guilty. This was the sentencing. "Mr. Miller," Judge Donnelly said, her voice echoing in the silent room. "You have pleaded guilty to 1 count of assaulting a federal officer and 1 count of deprivation of rights under colour of law. Before I pass sentence, do you have anything to say for yourself?" Miller stood, his hands shaking as he read from a prepared statement. "Your Honour, I'm deeply sorry for my actions. I lost my temper. I'm not a racist. I had a bad day. I am a good man who made a bad choice." A ripple of disgust went through the gallery. Evelyn didn't move a muscle. "A bad day, Mr. Miller," Judge Donnelly said, removing her glasses. She looked at him over the bench. "I have read the case file. I have seen the video. What I saw was not a bad day. What I saw was a public servant, a man given a badge and a gun to protect the citizens of this city, using his power to terrorize and assault a woman based on nothing more than her request for probable cause. And I suspect the color of her skin." "I'm not," Miller cried, his voice cracking. "You're not?" The judge continued, her voice rising. "Your 12 prior complaints, all against minorities, suggest otherwise. The fact that you felt comfortable choking a woman in the middle of a crowded airport on camera suggests to me that you have done this before, and that you have until now been protected. Your bad day was for Ms. Reed a moment of terror. It was for the public another day, where they are forced to question if the police are here to protect them or to terrorize them. Ms. Reed, the judge said, turning to Evelyn, "The government has informed me you are a federal employee. You are in fact a person who risks her life for this country, and on the day in question, you were treated with less respect than a common criminal. This court thanks you for your service." She turned back to Miller. "Your actions were not just an assault on a woman. They were an assault on the badge on the public trust, and on the very Constitution you swore to uphold. The recommended sentence of 10 years is in this court's opinion lenient. However, in accordance with the plea agreement, I sentence you, Kevin T. Miller, to 120 months in federal prison. You will serve them consecutively. You will pay restitution to the victim, and you will be remanded today." The gavel struck. It was over. Miller's wife, who had stood by him, burst into tears. Miller himself just sank his suit jacket bunching around his neck as the marshals cuffed him and led him away. Evelyn stood up. She walked out of the courtroom, past the reporters shouting her name. She didn't say a word. She got into a black car waiting for her and disappeared. 1 year later, O'Hare International Airport, Chicago. Evelyn Reed was once again at a terminal. She was heading to London. A new mission, a new legend. She wore a simple beige trench coat, her hair cut in a stylish short bob. She walked through security. The TSA agent, a young woman, smiled at her. "Have a nice day, madam." "You too." Evelyn smiled back. As she gathered her things, she saw a commotion near the gate. A man was shouting at a flight attendant, his face red. "I don't care if the gate is closed. I'm a first-class passenger. You will let me on that plane." 2 airport police officers approached. One was a tall man, the other a younger woman. "Sir," the female officer said, her voice calm but unbreakable, "you are causing a disturbance. You need to lower your voice." "I'll lower my voice when I'm on that plane," the man yelled. Evelyn watched, tensing. She watched the female officer's hands, her stance. The officer didn't move. "Sir, the flight is closed. Yelling at us will not change that. We can help you get rebooked, but you need to step away from the gate and lower your voice. Or what, you'll arrest me," he sneered. "We will detain you for interfering with airport operations." "Yes," the officer said, her hand not on her gun, but on her radio. "This is your final warning. Please step aside." The man, seeing the cameras, seeing the calm professional wall in front of him, and perhaps remembering a viral video from a year ago, finally deflated. "Fine," he muttered and stomped off. The officer, Ramirez, according to her name tag, made eye contact with Evelyn. She didn't know who Evelyn was. She just saw another passenger. She gave Evelyn a polite professional nod. Evelyn nodded back. She walked to her gate, found her seat, and looked out the window. The system wasn't fixed. Racism wasn't cured. But the ground had been salted. A message had been sent. And somewhere in a federal prison in Indiana, Kevin T. Miller was mopping a floor, a living testament to the fact that even the most entrenched systems can be broken one corrupt piece at a time. Evelyn Reed. Agent Cassandra closed her eyes. It was time to go home. That was the story of Evelyn Reed and the hard karma that hit Officer Kevin Miller. What we see here is a story of 2 Americas. One where power is abused, and another hidden one where it is held to account. Miller's racist arrogance led him to believe he was invincible. But he choked the one person who could and did burn his entire world to the ground. This wasn't just karma. It was a systemic reckoning. The world is full of Millers, but it's also full of Evelyn's quiet professionals who hold the line in secret. What did you think of Miller's downfall? Was it justice or just bad luck for him? Let me know in the comments below. If you are on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs to see karma served cold. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss another story of justice and vindication.